So I like movies, especially movies that have more movies, which is why I love myself a good, juicy trilogy. There have been quite a lot of movie trilogies through the years, some great, some awful, some mediocre, some that no one remembers, and there are even the occasional trio of movies that most people don't even know are connected. I have an infatuation with trilogies, which is why today I'll be giving my own personal list for the 10 best movie trilogies of all time, and I'll also score the movies while I'm at it. Now, most of the entries on this list are based on their qualities as movies, and of course how well they go together. Most of my picks are trilogies that as a movie lover I truly believe are fantastic and incredibly enjoyable. In my opinion, they deserve their spots as some of the greatest trilogies of all time. However, I admit that my own nostalgia has played a part in a couple of my choices. I still think they all have good qualities that have merit from a filmmaking standpoint, but I think some of you are going to disagree with me, which is fine. Film can be a very subjective field, and we're all naturally going to gravitate towards different movies. So let's all agree to respect each other's opinions, okay? And while you're at it, I'd love to read about your own personal lists down in the comments, so get typing, people. Also, just a heads up, if there are trilogies missing from this list that you think deserve to be here, then there is probably a reason for that. Most people will probably choose the Godfather movies as an exemplary trilogy, but I've only ever seen the first one. And it was good. I don't doubt its quality, but I wouldn't know about the other two. Same goes for Back to the Future. Also, Indiana Jones is a different problem altogether, because while I used to really like them, I haven't really watched them in a while, and honestly, I don't remember how good they are. Also, occasionally I will choose a trilogy out of a series that has more than 3 movies, but those 3 movies have to make for a cohesive and thorough story with just those 3. So I won't just take Harry Potter 1, 2, and 3, slap them together and call it a trilogy, because without the other 5 movies, the story is incomplete and wholly unsatisfying. And finally, keep in mind that opinions change. Every time I rewatch a movie, my opinion on it changes at least a little bit, and I discover something new, and the same goes for trilogies. So these rankings are just my thoughts as they are at this moment. If you asked me to do this video again in a year, things would probably be different. Anyways, I think you all get the point. Let's just get into it. Here are the top 10 greatest movie trilogies of all time.
No, God!
So we're starting off the list with the Star Wars prequels. Now this may come as a bit of a shock to some of you because I talk extensively about Star Wars on my channel, so you may have thought that I'd rate the prequel trilogy much higher than this. However, I don't, because while it is one of my personal favorites to watch, and I have a lot of nostalgia towards the trilogy, when you compare the overall quality of the films to some of the other entries on this list, I just can't get myself to rate them any higher than what they are. However, 10th place is still pretty decent. Looking at just how many movie trilogies there are in the world, being the 10th best is not bad. This trilogy definitely has noteworthy qualities, which include the world building that brings life and depth to this already amazing universe, the practical and visual effects that for their time were pretty good, and the music that, just like any other Star Wars movie, is truly amazing and has brought us some truly iconic themes. These films also provide a mostly well-focused narrative and story that adds cohesion to the trilogy as a whole. And although the plot is kinda disjointed at times, in the end the story resolves in a mostly satisfying way. There are definitely a lot of things to enjoy about this trilogy, however, there are also bad qualities. These include, as you all know, an underperforming cast, which I say because all these amazing actors really should have been doing a better job. However, it is in large part not their fault. It's due to the dialogue often sounding unnatural, awkward, and inhuman, which can be defended in some scenes but not all scenes, because it often breaks the immersion of the film. This point may not be a big issue for some people, especially if you're a person who loves Star Wars or just likes fun action-adventure movies, because then you probably won't care too much about acting and dialogue problems. However, if you're a fan of well-crafted and intimate movies, then this could definitely be a deal breaker for you. Furthermore, this trilogy has an overabundance of one-dimensional characters, which again hurts the level of investment you can have in these movies. Having one-dimensional characters in a movie isn't a bad thing, because every movie has at least some flat characters, and as long as they don't have such a big role in the movie, then they're alright. The problem with the prequels is that they don't make up for this with an abundance of multi-dimensional characters. We don't really have that many, and for me at least, it makes this otherwise emotional story seem less personal. It doesn't resonate with you as much as it could have. However, overall this trilogy has a lot of merit, depending on what kind of movie watcher you are. More of the technical and gritty aspects of filmmaking, like the writing, the character development and progression, the acting, the pacing, don't always work for me, but the trilogy focuses more on world building and the creative ideas and visions behind Star Wars. It creates a spectacle with beautiful music and downright epic lightsaber battles. It's not my favorite trilogy of all time, but it's definitely a classic for me that I can watch on multiple occasions and always get some kind of enjoyment out of it. Overall, I give the Star Wars prequels a 6 out of 10, which is not a low score, people. Too many set the bar for a bad movie as a 5 out of 10, but for me that's not bad. It's standard, it's what a film should at least always be. And so a 6 is better than average. It's a good film, or trilogy in this sense. So 6 out of 10 is good, and I get this score by putting the 3 movie scores together. Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones for me are 5 out of 10 movies, while Revenge of the Sith is a solid 7 out of 10. So that averages out to a 6 out of 10. So in 9th place we have the Star Wars sequels. Now this is probably going to cause mayhem because a lot of people will get angry at the fact that I think the sequels are better than the prequels. But just hear me out first. I have 2 categorizations for this list. And the first one is how well connected the trilogy is, and how strong the 3 movies are together. And this is where I think the prequels do a better job than the sequels. While I do believe The Last Jedi is a good sequel to The Force Awakens, I also think that The Rise of Skywalker feels a bit disconnected at times from the other 2. Due to all the meddling problems that happened between The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker ended up retconning a few things that made The Last Jedi so strong, which all in all hurts the trilogy as a whole. However, it is not broken. It's still a cohesive trilogy, and the second category for this list is the quality of the movies individually. And I think the sequels win in this department. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are some of the better Star Wars movies, and while The Rise of Skywalker doesn't quite beat out Revenge of the Sith for me, it definitely stands taller than Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. If we look at what all the sequel films have, we'll see good to even superb acting, with actors such as Adam Driver and Mark Hamill being brilliant. We also have special and practical effects that all look amazing. We have beautiful music as always, and we have engaging and sometimes story-filled action. Also, despite the occasional sloppy writing or plot hole, most of the central characters in these movies are fleshed out with interesting and complex motivations and development. The standout characters being Luke, Rey, Kylo, and Finn from The Force Awakens. But more than that, the individual movies have their own unique qualities, with The Force Awakens having really good pacing, The Last Jedi having stellar cinematography and awesome moments of subversion, and The Rise of Skywalker having surprisingly good humor. All in all, the movies in this trilogy are not bad. They actually work really well as movies. However, they do also have quite a few flaws, like how despite some of the amazing characters we also get a few misused or downright bad characters, like Finn in the other 2 movies, Poe in The Rise of Skywalker, Rose Tico, and Palpatine, who either just fall flat or have nothing to do within the story. There are also plot holes that arise from the lack of planning done ahead of time, which overall hurts the story. All of this, along with badly placed humor, the occasional awkward dialogue, and the Canto Bite scene, make you realize that these movies aren't perfect. They're flawed movies, but they still have a lot of great qualities that help you look past those flaws. The Rise of Skywalker is a 6 out of 10 for me, and The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are both either a 7.5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, depending on my mood. However, due to the occasional lack of connectivity in this trilogy, overall I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Whew. Alright, those two trilogies took up a lot of time, and I'm sorry for that. They're also the more controversial ones, so from now on, I won't ramble on as much, and we'll do the rest of this list as a speed run. So next up on this list, we have the Captain America trilogy, which is in my opinion the best trilogy in the MCU. I mean, there aren't really many to choose from. Iron Man 1 and 3 are really good, but Iron Man 2 is one of the most boring movies in the franchise, so we can't choose that one. Thor Ragnarok is fantastic, but who really remembers the first two? I also can't really use the Avengers as a trilogy because, well, I'd have to choose Avengers 1, Age of Ultron, and then Infinity War without Endgame? That's weird. And it's also just not a trilogy. It's much more than that. Guardians of the Galaxy, however, is soon going to be a trilogy, and it could possibly be really good because I like the first two. But as of right now, the Captain America trilogy takes up the 8th spot on our list. And this is because it tells a deep and rich story all the way throughout. Now, the first Avenger is definitely the weaker film in the trilogy. It has an amazing first act that shows us an intimate story of Steve Rogers and what it truly means to be a hero. But the second half of this film is action-packed, and not really much more than that. Red Skull is basic and boring as hell, and most of the side characters don't matter at all to the story or even to us as the audience. I just think this movie could have been a lot better than what it is. However, the other two movies make up for the problems with this one. The Winter Soldier is a really good movie. It's gritty, it's well made, it continues the story of Steve Rogers, and this is probably the movie that makes him most people's favorite character. It's just a film that has an engaging story with well choreographed fight scenes, exhilarating music, and a complex and personal story, but it still retains the Marvel charm. A lot of people think it's good because it's different from all the other MCU movies, but that's not really true. It's very similar to the others in terms of structure and formula. It's just done really well. It's a solid ass movie and the best in the trilogy. But then we have Civil War, which is also a really well made film. This is probably the most normally good movie in the franchise. Like, the flaws are at a minimum and the problems that do arise are mostly personal or significant to the individual watching. It's a film with a lot of good qualities like the acting of Chris Evans, RDJ, and Chadwick Boseman in particular. And having said that, Black Panther is a great character with emotional motivations that keep us invested in his story. We also get Spider-Man and a massive team up with all these heroes we've grown to love. The final fight is also really memorable. My main problem with this movie is the lack of true consequence to this whole fucking Civil War. Like, they're all just basically good friends afterwards and team up in Infinity Wars anyways. It just could have been more personal. However, overall, it's still a solid movie, and this is a solid trilogy. I give Captain America 1 a 6.5 out of 10. Winter Soldier gets an 8 out of 10, and Civil War gets a 7.5. As a trilogy, however, I give it the score of 7.5 out of 10. Now, if you thought that was the only superhero trilogy I'd talk about today, then you were gravely mistaken, because next up we have the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Now, I just made a long ass video explaining why Spider-Man 3 is indeed an underrated movie, and I stand by that. However, I may have made it out to be better than the other two, which it probably isn't. Overall, this trilogy is very comic booky, which was of course the intention, and it works. They're goofy and funny and awkward at times, but when they want to make you feel emotions and affect you on a deeper level, then they do it. They're of course helped along the way by a phenomenal score that instantly raises this trilogy to great standards. There are some engaging characters, fun action, good world building, hilarious comedy, and so much more. And despite the at times cringy dialogue and acting, the weird editing, the abysmal CGI, and the villain problem in the third one, then this trilogy stands as one of the pillars of what superhero movies can accomplish. If I were to to rank all 3 movies, I'd give Spider-Man 1 a 7.5 out of 10, Spider-Man 2 an 8 out of 10, and Spider-Man 3 a 7 out of 10. 10 out of 10 for the memes. But overall, that means that this trilogy as a whole is a solid 7.5 out of 10. I know it's very similar in terms of its score to the Captain America movies, and I do rate them very similarly, however I'd give the edge to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Then we have the Toy Story trilogy, which as you all know is really great. Now I know there is a Toy Story 4 now, and it's good, it's very good. However, in my mind the first 3 are a cohesive unit, and the 4th one is that adopted wonder kid that plays the piano like Picasso and ends up being John Williams. Trust me, it's great. But I'm just talking about the first 3 here because they're fantastic and whole even without the 4th one. There's not really much to say about the Toy Story trilogy because we all know the quality that they possess. They're funny, which is a given when it's Pixar, but they're also very character focused, and in each installment we explore fantastic themes that just hit differently because these movies are about growing up, which is something that we all experience. And therefore we get emotionally invested in the plot. Take into account that the 3rd one has one of the best villains in movie history, and we've got ourselves a legendary trilogy. I'd rate Toy Story 1 as a 7.5 out of 10, Toy Story 2 as an 8 out of 10, and Toy Story 3 as an 8.5 out of 10. Now this may come as a shock to some of you. It is not often that the 3rd movie of a trilogy is the best. However, at least to me, Toy Story 3 is the most emotionally resonant in the trilogy. And although I always look forward to watching all of them, I look forward to watching this one the most. So there you have it. The Toy Story trilogy is overall an 8 out of 10. Alright. Now the top 5 are the creme de la creme of movie trilogies. Would they all deserve to be on this top 5 if we took every trilogy into account and ranked them all on a true objective basis? Probably not, but they for sure be contenders. These trilogies are what I would consider my type of movies, and most of the trilogies from now on are damn near perfect in my opinion. However, I simply just can't choose between 4 and 5. I think they have equal merit depending on what you're looking for from a trilogy, so I'm just gonna start by talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now I know there are technically 5 movies, but 4 and 5 have nothing to do with the first 3, and them not being here really doesn't take anything away from the franchise. I just freaking love Pirates of the Caribbean, and I think that they're the perfect action-adventure movies. There's so much to love about this franchise: the music, the performances, the characters, the lore, the action scenes, the cinematography, the effects, the interactions, the setting, the villains, just everything. If you really want to look for the cracks, then you can easily find some, but everything that I just mentioned makes you completely forget about any negative that may be present in these movies. Now of course the best thing about the trilogy is of course Jack Sparrow, who's arguably my favorite character of all time. Johnny Depp did such an amazing job with his character, but not only him. Will, Elizabeth, Barbossa, Davy Jones, Beckett, there's so many great personalities in these movies that make all the drama and betrayal so exciting to watch. On the surface, these movies may just seem like grand scale action movies, but there's so much more than that. It's like the Lord of the Rings but with pirates, and that's truly some of the best praise I can give. Curse of the Black Pearl is of course the best, and in my opinion even worthy of a fucking Oscar. It's a complex but intimate story of pirates that gradually opens up to more supernatural part of this universe, and this is something that the later 2 capitalize on. Now this with some of the most interestingly written characters in cinema and some truly spectacular action set pieces, the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy stands as one of the best trilogies of all time. Maybe my ratings are a tiny bit biased and based on nostalgia, but I'd give the first movie a 9 out of 10, and then I give the other 2 movies as a collective an 8.5 out of 10. Overall, the trilogy then earns a score of 8.5 out of 10. So the next trilogy that's a part of this little joint rank with Pirates of the Caribbean is the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. And to those of you who are thinking that I can't be serious, and how can some animated movies about a fat panda possibly be better than the likes of The Winter Soldier and Spider-Man 2? And to that I have to say, shut up. go get enlightened. I'm obviously joking, you can like whatever movie you want, but anyone who loves film and has truly watched these movies will know just how underrated they are, because this trilogy is a cohesive story of Po the Panda, where every new movie adds nuance to the story and provides complex obstacles for him to face and learn from. Right off the bat, the animation work is so detailed. When watching Kung Fu Panda, you will not be able to tell that this film came out in 2008. Every single frame is crafted with so much care and love, and it only gets better in the other movies. This trilogy also benefits from a wonderful setting that provides beautifully rich music and a shit ton of lore. And the characters that we're introduced to are so fleshed out, and the ones that get left behind in one of the movies get their share of development in the future movies. The first movie is a fun and exhilarating film with great comedic moments and engaging action, but also provides a motivational story of Po and his insecurities and how he rises to the top and saves the village. The second one adds on to these themes and provides a darker tone with a complex backstory for Po, and these two are some of the best animated movies of all time in my opinion. Now the third one isn't quite on the same level, but it still manages to provide a unique and deep story for Po and the other characters. Po learns something different in all three movies, and each villain we see symbolizes a different flaw in his character. This trilogy is so well made, and of course Jack Black is phenomenal. Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2 are in my opinion 9 out of 10 movies, and Kung Fu Panda 3 is a solid 8 out of 10. Overall, just like the Pirates of the Caribbean, this trilogy earns a rating of 8.5 out of 10. We've arrived at the big three. This is where shit gets real. The three greatest movie trilogies ever in my opinion. And we're starting off with the original Star Wars trilogy. Now it would be a massive understatement to say that A New Hope has had an impact on cinema, because basically every action-adventure fantasy blockbuster that has ever come out since has only been made because of Star Wars. This movie literally revolutionized one of the biggest businesses in the world, and cinema today wouldn't be nearly what it is today without Star Wars. This movie had effects, both practical and visual, that had never been seen before, and the vision behind it all was so strong that it gave birth to one of the biggest franchises of all time. However, we need to remember that this movie is not just good because of the impact it had on cinema, it's also just a really good movie. The pacing, the world building, the iconic characters, the story. This movie is a masterpiece both as a spectacle and as a movie. And guess what? It's not even the best movie in the franchise. Empire Strikes Back is one of the best sequels and just movies in general of all time. It builds upon everything A New Hope set up and makes these qualities even better. The characters are developed further, even giving attention to Darth Vader as a person. The cinematography is more dynamic, which gives the movie more life. The themes are complex and provide us with interesting concepts, the universe is expanded upon, and we have the most iconic plot twist of all time. Empire Strikes Back, in my opinion, is a perfect movie. Yes, you can probably find some flaws if you really look for them, but it doesn't fucking matter because they take absolutely nothing away from how good this movie is. Now, Return of the Jedi is the weaker movie of the trilogy due to the convoluted first act, the almost filler nature of the Endor act, and of course Han's lack of character. However, this movie is not bad. It's still one of the best Star Wars movies. Final act is fantastic with Luke and Vader's showdown and the great character moments we get. But even within the problems that I talked about, you can find some moments of fun and excitement, or even complexity and meaning. It's still an amazing movie, but compared to the other two, it just falls a bit behind. Overall, I give A New Hope a solid 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10 if I took into account the effect it had on cinema, but as the film that revolutionized an entire genre, it does have some problems that the other movies have since refined. That's just natural. It's what happens when you revolutionize something. People take what you started and make it better. That is the tragic part of being a good teacher. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Empire Strikes Back is a perfect 10 out of 10, and Return of the Jedi is a strong 8 out of 10. The trilogy as a whole, therefore, is 9 out of 10. There you go. Those are my views on the original Star Wars movies. Now on to The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight trilogy is truly a sensationally well-made trilogy of movies. It's of course made by the legend himself, Christopher Nolan, who can do basically no wrong. These movies bring Gotham to life in a way that we've never seen before, and even manages to turn Gotham into a character of its own. They're movies with deep themes and concepts that are mostly executed perfectly. They contain some truly stellar performances, and they even have wonderfully complex villains to boast about in all three movies. Now, with Batman Begins being a fantastic origin story that brings nuance to the tale of Bruce Wayne, and The Dark Knight Rises being a slightly flawed but emotional finale to the trilogy, despite their greatness, they both bow down to the greatest comic book movie ever made. The Dark Knight is perfect. Heath Ledger provides one of the best performances ever, and the Joker is one of the most complex, nuanced, crazy, and engaging villains in cinema, period. This single character takes this already fantastic movie and perfects it. The story is compelling, emotional, motivational, depressing, and entertaining all at the same time. In my opinion, The Dark Knight is a perfect movie, and it definitely deserves its 10 out of 10 rating. The other two are also fantastic, with Batman Begins being an easy 9 out of 10 and The Dark Knight Rises is an 8.5 out of 10, which means this trilogy as a whole is a solid 9 out of 10. And before we get to the top spot, let's quickly talk about some honorable mentions that I just had to talk about for various reasons. Firstly, we have the Michael Bay Transformers trilogy, which was so important to me during my childhood. I know that except for the first one being decent, this trilogy isn't that great, but I have a special place in my heart for these movies, so suck it. We also have the Hobbit trilogy, which I think I enjoy more than the average person because of my love for Middle-earth. However, I accept that they are deeply flawed movies. To be honest, they probably could have been on this list, but oh well. We'll talk about them another day. However, it leads us perfectly into the top spot, which you probably all saw coming. The Lord of the Rings. This is the greatest movie trilogy of all time. Like, I can't think of any other trio of movies where every single one is a masterpiece in filmmaking. Because these movies aren't just perfect for nerds, they're perfect for movie lovers. Literally every aspect of filmmaking has been taken into account and renovated in some kind of way. Like, if any of you have ever taken a film course in anything, you can bet your ass these movies get mentioned at some point, whether it's to teach you shots and angles, or how to write internal and external conflict, or make engaging action scenes and create suspense, or world building, or acting, or whatever. These movies have it all. Now, I'm not going to delve too deeply into each of these movies and explain exactly why they're all perfect, because I'll be doing that in a separate video not too long from now. However, what I can say about this trilogy is that it has been with me ever since I came to this world, and they've truly helped me throughout every stage of my life, whether it being my happy childhood, my lonely teens, my heartbreaks, and even now, they help keep me motivated and determined to keep going in those moments where I begin to lose my courage. They mean the world to me, and my faith in them has never wavered. When I was a child, I loved these movies for being epic fantasy movies with big battles and cool creatures, but as I matured both as a person and also as a film enthusiast, my love for these movies only increased, which I thought was impossible. Now, some of you may be wondering why I've never talked about these movies since I love them so much, and it's honestly for a stupid but very personal reason. I've never made a video about these movies because I didn't think I'd ever be able to do them justice. I didn't think that any video I could possibly make would be worthy of talking about these masterpieces, and I didn't think I'd ever be able to convey my exact feelings about these movies to you guys, and it always discouraged me. It's honestly a fear I have, but I've since realized that it's stupid and makes no sense. If I want to talk about them, I will, so don't worry, I'll make an in-depth video on The Lord of the Rings soon, I promise. But for now, I give this trilogy a perfect 10 out of 10. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, why not leave a like and subscribe for more videos, it really helps out the channel. Join my Discord, the link is in the description and in the comments, you'll have a great time over there. Other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, stay safe and peace out.